Right, welcome back to the fish room. As you can see, we're making a lot of progress in here. This paludarium's starting to come to life and look great. But I've started a new project in the cellar, which is going to help me when the tank arrives for this paludarium and planting it and scaping it at the bottom. It's something that I've never done before, so come take a look at what we've got on. Right, so let me introduce you to my latest project, which is the dirted tank. So if you don't know what a dirted tank is, what we do is we use a very nutrient dense layer of topsoil as on the bottom of the tank as a substrate, and then we cap it off with a thick layer of sand or fine gravel. The reason it's important to cap this off is because it's so nutrient dense. If you leave this open and exposed to the water column, not only is it going to create an absolute mess in your tank, but you're going to have an explosion of ammonias, nitrates, nitrites. It's going to cause a few problems for your water parameters, especially at the beginning of the project. So it's important that we cap it off so that we're not getting horrible algae blooms, or if you've got livestock, it's not having a negative impact on them. But this is completely new territory for me. I've never set up a dirted tank before. Typically, when people set these up, they have it as a complete closed ecosystem. So they'll have no filtration on it, and maybe something just at the top creating a little bit of surface agitation. I have decided to run the sump on this setup, but it has got a very, very, very minimal flow rate on it. This sump is hardly making a noise. I'm not even getting any condensation on the lids because there's very minimal water movement in there. So I don't want to be blasting this with flow and blowing the plants all over the place. But I'm really happy with how it's turned out. So first of all, if you watch the channel often, you're probably wondering where my fish have gone out of this rack. I decided to knock the breeding project on the head because I was finding it quite hard to find pedigree female peacock cichlids in shops because a lot of them are mixed peacocks, so it's really hard to tell what species they are for a start. It's difficult to get them in the size that I needed them in, and then also the aggression that went on in this tank when I was trying to breed the iBuyers was I just could not control it. There was nothing I could do about it. So I've decided to knock the breeding project on the head. The male Malawi iBuyer that was in this tank, reluctantly I've had to give to a friend who has a much bigger HAP system. I tried to reintegrate that iBuyer into my tank 2 times after I'd put him in here. The first time he was showing a lot of aggression. He wasn't even in there for 24 hours and he was beating fish to death. The second time I put him in, he killed my large Fusco, which I was really upset about. And I've had that fish for a very long time. And he really was one of the trophy fish that I had in that tank. So I was really upset about that. I had to bring him back down here. And I basically had 2 choices. He either lives his years out in this smaller display, or I put him in the main display upstairs and he terrorizes all my fish. So as much as I loved him, and he was a beautiful fish as well, I did have to give him away to a friend who's got a much larger HAP tank, who can probably not going to have any issues in there with him. The Malawi hawk colony are currently situated in the Mbuna tank until they get a little bit more size on them. So the fish that I have got left, the main predator in that main display upstairs was the Fusco. So I think once they get a bit of bulk on them and a little bit more size, I'll be able to introduce them into the main display and they can grow out even further. So that's obviously left me with 2 spare tanks. So I thought I'd set this up. And the theory with it is to use this as like a plant propagation tank. So when the main display for the paludarium comes, the theory is The volume in here should have doubled. I can just come down, pick all the plants that I want out of here, take them upstairs and use them in that tank, and I don't have to go to the shop and buy all these plants all over again. I think they will do really well. Now, what sort of encouraged me to do a dirted setup, one is I've never done one before, and two is I've always been intrigued by the idea of having a really dense nutrient layer at the bottom, because aqua soil, yeah, it gives you the nutrients, but I just can't make sense of it in my head how efficient aqua soil is. It's a nightmare to plant plants in, and I just think this thick sort of dense layer of soil will be a lot more beneficial for the plants. Now, I've watched a couple of tutorials. MD's got some good ones. Fish Shop Matt's got loads of low tech, you know, no CO2 planted tanks as well, which are really good and have flourished really well. So I wanted to kind of copy those to a degree. The way I've done it, I've used a probably a little bit too thick of a nutrient base, which is like pond substrate. I've packed that down and then I've capped it with play sand. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of play sand in aquariums, and if you've ever used it before, when you try and empty a tank or clear a tank which you've used play sand in, it's like trying to get cement out at the end. That is why I chose this, not for the aesthetics, but because it has that substance to it. I think it'd be really good at capping off the nutrient layer at the bottom. And to be honest, it's an absolute dream to plant plants in. So people say that, you know, when you plant in sand, in comparison to aqua soil, your plants can float up. I actually find it the complete opposite. I find it a lot easier to plant in sand, and I feel like the plants really stay in place a lot better when you do. So let me talk you through some of the plants I've got in here and why I've chosen them. So first, I've got some of the Holanthium in here, which is like a little miniature aquatic spider plant, and it branches off and creates these new spider-like grasses on the substrate bed. So I've gone for them because what I want to do is I want to get a green accent in that paludarium build upstairs, and I want it to look really weedy. So I've gone for really weedy looking plants because I feel like they look a little bit more natural and jungleistic, a little bit more suited for like a riverbed or a riverbank. So that's what I wanted to go for. So I've got the Holanthium in there. I've got the Liliopsis, which you can see I've tucked away against some of these rocks. Again, it's got that weedy, grassy texture to it. It's quite an easy plant to grow, so it does really well without CO2 as well, and it spreads quite nicely and grows fast too. I've got these little interesting plants as well with the white flowers on the top. I'm not quite sure what they're called. I'll see if I can find the tub somewhere here. Eriacaulon. So I did do a little bit of research on this, and I know these do better with CO2. I'm not injecting CO2 into this tank, so I've decided not to do it. I just want to sort of leave this to go wild and just grow out. I want it to be a true dirted tank, low tech, something that isn't going to cost a fortune, that I can just set it and forget it and let it grow out. But I'm going to see how they get on anyway. These did have white tips on the flowers, but they seem to have died off a little bit. This tank's only been running for about a week, by the way, so it's still there's still room for error. There's still room for problems that can pop up with this. I'm still waiting for an algae outbreak, so I am expecting that to happen. I have decided just to run the sump on it, so just to get a little bit of water movement in here, and then also so that if I am getting ammonia spikes from this substrate layer at the bottom, this media is cycled, so it may be able to deal with it and mitigate the amount of algae I have explode in this tank. So I'm also running an AI Hydra on it as well, which is a powerful light, and I'm skeptical whether to dial that down or not. I'm not sure yet. If I see algae start popping up, I'll dial it down and hopefully the plants won't feel any impact from it. But it's looking okay considering we're a week in. I've got a few Vallisneria at the back. And what I want to happen there is they spread very quick and they grow very fast. They don't need a lot. They don't need CO2. Well, they do. They just don't need an injection of CO2 into the tank to thrive. And I'm expecting that to grow a thick curtain behind this log. What I've put in here, I've got a few cryptocornis. So I've got 2 at the front here, 2 at the back, sort of mid-ground. They'll grow, medium-sized growing plant, but a really nice plant and quite easy to keep, good in low CO2 systems. And then I've got the classic Amazon swords as well. So I want to integrate those into the paludarium, especially because they are low maintenance, they're easy to care for. I don't know how much light I'm going to get to penetrate from that canopy down into the tank. So what I might do is I might actually dial this down to acclimatise the plants to a low light. But what I want to do is try and get them rooted in and set off first of all before I start doing that. But yeah, I mean, I'm really excited to see, how this turns out. These little clove-like plants that you can see here in bunches, I planted the majority of these last night, and these are from my the germination project upstairs, what I've done in the box on the paludarium stand. So these are a mystery plant. I don't know what they are. I can't identify them. If anybody knows what these are, drop them in the comments. But these are seeds that are bought online. I've heard some horror stories about seeds for aquatic plants that you buy online. Sometimes they don't germinate. These actually did really quickly and really well. But I've also read that sometimes they're not true aquatic plants. So I planted these 2 in here at first, when I first set the tank up, because I wanted to see if once I submerged them, they would melt and dissolve and if there'd be any point in planting them. But these 2 that I put in to begin with, you can see the difference in them compared to the ones that I've recently planted. So these ones have really plumped up and look like they're thriving now, they're submerged. So I've planted a few more little bunches of them along the floor just to see how they get on and see how they do, because they're really cool looking plant. I think if these spread across the substrate, it'll look really cool. I've tried to scape this a little bit. I've not gone all out. I've just used spare parts that have been in the cellar. So spare logs, a couple of spare bits of Sirius stone that I've got. So this isn't my, 100% effort creating a beautiful aquascape. It really isn't. It's not that at all. All I've done is chuck these bits in just to make it a little bit presentable, so that when I come down, I can spend a little bit of time and actually enjoy it. I might get some livestock in it, so I might get some shrimp in here. I might stock some smaller shoals of tetra in here at one point. Obviously, I want to let it cycle and test the ammonia and make sure that the nutrient-dense substrate isn't causing any spikes that would harm any livestock first. So I'm going to leave it a couple of weeks, but I might stock some small schools of tetra in here ready to go in the paludarium upstairs when it's built. But I'm really quite excited about this because it's the first time I've ever done one, and I'm intrigued to see how the plants perform without CO2 but with this soil at the bottom, because I think this is really beneficial. It's really good for the plants to root into and get a hold of, and then not having to put substrate tabs in there and things like that to feed the plants and get them kicking off. And the interesting thing is, every time that I've set up a high-tech planted tank, even after a week, when I've put plants in, I've noticed that, I've got melting on some plants somewhere where the leaves are dying off and not doing too great. I can't see any of that in this tank. So all the plants seem to be thriving. They look better than when I initially planted them. These cryptocorni are looking amazing in comparison to when I actually put them in the tank. That's the good thing about this being down here, because I'm not always in the cellar, so I only come down here, once every couple of days. So I can really see the difference in the tank when I come down. I can see how much the plants have grown, what's plumped up, in comparison to where you're walking past it every day. You don't notice it the same. So yeah, I'm really happy with how it's turned out. and I'm excited to see how these plants grow. I think this Vallisneria at the back's going to blow up, so I think I'm going to have loads of that. But it's interesting to see how these carpeting plants get on. Some of the stuff that you would typically see in higher tech setups, and see how that takes off in here as well. Right, so that's another thing to tick off my list of aquarium projects. I've now finally created a dirted tank, which I'm hoping is going to show progress and serve some sort of purpose when the tank gets here for this. What we are going to be doing is spending a lot more time with the babies, the OGs, the African cichlids. What I want to do with this tank is completely rescape it. So I'm going to get some new substrate in here. I'm thinking something maybe a little bit lighter, and then I might even try some new rocks in here as well. But I just want to make this look a little bit different, just because I'll be honest, I'm a little bit sick of looking at it the way it is now. I love how the Mbuna tank has this brightness and this sort of beachy look to it. I'd kind of like that in here a little bit, but I'm not sure yet. I'm going to have a good think about it. I'm going to get some new substrate in there. I need to stock some more fish in here because I have had a couple of deaths. So some of my smaller peacocks were killed by my Malawi eye biter. My Fusco was killed by my Malawi eye biter. Although this guy, I did have two. Since that other one has perished, the smaller one has had a growth spurt and started colouring up and looking really nice. But I mean, that's not the point. Anyway, I love that fish. The tank's looking a little bit emptier than it usually does. So I'm going to have a good shop around because obviously these fish are getting big now. So it's going to be difficult for me to find fish the correct size for this tank because I don't want to be putting smaller ones in here and they just get obliterated. So we'll do some careful shopping. We're going to spend a lot more time with the African cichlid tank. I may even have a switch around on the filtration underneath. I don't know whether to flip this onto a canister filter because I'm not too happy with the water clarity that I'm getting from the sump right now. So I might even switch it to 2 canister filters and see if it gives the tank a little bit more aesthetic appeal. Because what I've noticed is when I film this tank close up, if I sit in my chair and watch it, it looks okay. But when I'm filming the tank, you can really see all the particulates in the water column floating around, and that bothers me. So I'm thinking of switching things up a little bit. But if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a like. If you're enjoying all the stuff on the channel, subscribe, come back, watch more. We do multiple projects here. We've got loads on the go. This thing is going to be phenomenal when it's complete. It's already becoming my favorite tank. So it's been my favorite project to build. I absolutely love how it looks. I've got all sorts of gadgets on it and cool things which I'll show you in the next part of the Paludarium build. So make sure you come and subscribe.